not about to worry about it. What I'm about to do is continue on to what I was doing, which is this live, okay? Because here's the thing, y'all already know that the devil will come in, honey. You know how the old folks say, y'all know I'm at that age where I'll be talking about the devil and stuff. That's what the old people talk about. But y'all know how they say the devil will come in and they'll try to do things and interrupt you, okay? Now, I've been trying to go live for 3 days. 3 days. Okay. Today is Sunday. I've been trying to go live Friday, Thursday, Friday. And here we are. Okay. And I'm just now going live because every time I try to go live, something happens. Life takes over. Okay. Something happens and life takes over. But what I said was today, we wasn't doing that today. We was not doing that today. So as soon as I find myself and I make sure I'm live, we're going to continue on with this video, honey. We're going to continue on with this video. First, I got to make sure that y'all can hear me out there. I got to make sure I'm live. So I do that because y'all know I am a one-woman show. I know I am a one-woman show. And so because I am a one-woman show, honey, I got to do it all. I got to be the doggone engineer. Okay, I had to be the engineer. I got to be the person that makes sure I got to do everything. Listen, welcome to Hood Parenting. Welcome to Hood Parenting Live, buddy. Welcome to Hood Parenting Live. Listen, live in the flesh. I decided today I'm going to do this more like a podcast type of deal, right? Where I get to talk to the people and I get to tell you the things that's going on, the things that I know that I'm supposed to talk about, the things that I've been led to talk about, and the reason why we are here, the reason why hood parenting is, listen, it's not a movement yet. It's not a movement yet, but it will be a movement. It will definitely be a movement. So before we get there, I know that there are things that has to be done. And so I'm looking at myself here on the camera and I'm also looking at my notes, y'all, because y'all know how we are. And when I say we, please forgive me. I'm talking about people my age, y'all know. Okay, because I reckon, and here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it time and time again, because I don't care what nobody say. There is difference with the way you look at life and the way your body behaves in life the older you get. Okay, so people will say, well, you know what? You shouldn't say this. You shouldn't say that. You know, old people, you did. Listen, I already know that because of my age, there are certain things that I can't do. And being able to do all these little bitty things right here, listen, I got to do one at a time. Okay. I got to watch it. Okay. So I already know that I'm doing these things. I get it together. Okay. I'll get it together. But listen, again, welcome to Hood Parenting Live. Welcome to Hood Parenting Live. So today we are starting from the very beginning. And the reason why we are starting from the very beginning is because, see, when it comes to hood parenting, I never really sat down and really gave the audience exactly the reason why this platform is necessary. I never really talked about why hood parenting is something that is so needed. As a matter of fact, it probably was needed a long time ago, long before I even came up with this or it was even birthed. I didn't come up with it, but I paid somebody to come up with it, and that's the same difference. But what's so unique about this day? Okay, and I was on 75 hard, y'all. I was on 75 hard. I'm not. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay. So it is wine time. I'll start back on it tomorrow. So I got to start back over. I was on day like 20. I got to start back over. Okay, that's not a problem. Why was hood parenting created? How was it created and how we get here? I want to go back to the beginning. As a matter of fact, 2 years from today, 2 years from this weekend, just about. So I won't tell like the story of the people necessarily involved by name, but I want to talk about how when a person is walking in alignment, then the things that you are supposed to do and the things that you are supposed to be will come to fruition. And I cannot go back to the very beginning of how I even hired the coaches that came up with the hood parenting for me, because that means that I would have to roll too many stories. And because I am a storyteller, honey, we be here all night. And I know y'all ain't got all night to tell y'all how hood parenting was born. So I'm going to get to the part that I feel like y'all need to hear. Okay. So this weekend, 2023, the first weekend in August 2023, that was the first time in my life that I had ever been to Disneyland as an adult with adults. hmm I was invited to go to Disneyland as an adult with all adults. And honey, let me tell you something. When it comes to Disneyland, I did not know that Disneyland is to be enjoyed without your children, to be honest. Listen, don't tell them I told you this, okay? But Disneyland is really to be enjoyed without your children. Okay, I'm on justice just a little bit. Disneyland is actually to be enjoyed without your children. You don't need your children for Disneyland, because when you take your children to Disneyland, although they will be excited about certain things, they will look at it from a gender area. Like, for example, the girls, they're going to be in love with the princesses and stuff, and the Moanas and the Arianas and all that. They're going to be in love with all that. We already know that. The boys, they're going to be in love with the games where the roller coasters, or the ones where you're fighting, or you're spinning around in your car like this. But when you are an adult and you go to Disneyland, honey, baby, you appreciate everything that Disneyland has to offer when you go as an adult. When you go to Disneyland as an adult, you appreciate everything. So it was this weekend, 2023, and I want to say that this is when I became impregnated with the idea of hood parenting. Okay. Now, reason why I say impregnated, right? Because this is where my coaches and my peers, right? The people who were in the coaching program with me, because we all got together in Disneyland, all right, out in California, right? It was a adult weekend in Disneyland. And when I tell you, if you've never been to Disneyland, where you do everything first class, like, listen, you're escorted through the whole park. Then on top of that, you got fast passes, but you don't just have fast passes, okay? Fast passes is when you actually go to the front of the line. Okay, we had some super boat lightning passes. I don't know what they were called, but I'm gonna call them super boat lightning passes. And here's why. When we would get to the front of the line, right? Not only did we just get to the front, but we didn't even have to say nothing, because there was some lady that was escorting us and she did everything for us. Okay. I was like, this is some rich people shit, right? Yeah, this is some rich people shit. And I made up my mind right then and there. I was never going to Disneyland again unless I go the way I went. Okay. Shout out to Roberto Candelaria and Warren Carlisle. Okay. Shout out to them both. Okay. Because listen, they introduced me to something I had never seen before. So needless to say, I'm not going back to Disneyland unless I go that way. Okay, we even ate our dinner in the middle of the little river area, the little swamp thing. We even ate our dinner there. It was all VIP. Baby, when I tell you, but let me tell y'all something. That trip to Disneyland, I cried the whole weekend. Yes, I did. I did. I cried the whole weekend. It started off when y'all, okay, if you've never been to Disneyland before you actually go into the park, I guess they have like this area of Disneyland that's like, I don't even know what it's called. It's called Universal. I don't know. But it's like the downtown area of Disneyland, if I could say that right. You're not really in the park, but you have to abide by the park rules. Like, you can't be up in there smoking and stuff. You can't be up in there just doing stuff. You got to abide by the park rules. But this is where you have more shops. You have like things like you could see stuff. You could just see stuff, sit down, restaurants. It's like it's not really in the park because you ain't paid to get in there, but you got to abide by the rules of the park. Okay. So while we were in there, let me first by saying this was the night before we actually went to the park. We're in there and we're walking by the windows. Y'all know the windows at Disneyland where y'all have the chocolatiers. I think that's what they're called. They're called chocolatiers. Okay. Y'all know the people that sit there and they make the chocolate. They had a chocolate. Just taking the chocolate and they doing it like this, and it'd be so yummy. Baby, them people was making that chocolate. They was making it right there in that store. But here's why I started crying. Here's why I started crying. When I started watching these people make chocolate, they really enjoy making chocolate. You can see them literally making chocolate. Like you could look in the windows. Like you really like it's not even a window like this. Like literally it's a big like nothing but windows. It's nothing but windows. So on their side, their desk, their work area is in the window. So you get to see them making chocolate. So anything they do, you can watch them make chocolate right there in Disneyland. And when I tell y'all I was watching these people make chocolate right there in Disneyland, I began to cry. And the reason why I began to cry because it looked like they were really, really enjoying what the heck they were doing. These people look like they really took pride in their job. It looked like such a humble experience until it was almost like, oh my God. And I'm a Pisces. This I know. But I'm also a big baby. But it was just something about it was the humbleness of it. It was like then people are part of even the chocolatiers, the people who were sitting in the who were actually making the chocolate for, when you come into Disneyland, there's all kind of chocolate you can eat, like the Disney shaped chocolate. I mean, they make everything right there on the campus or on the Disneyland grounds, okay? All the candy, all the food, the fresh, they make everything right there, okay? So I'm watching these people and there was an elder lady. She could tell she was an older lady. She probably been there for years. And she was just sitting there making chocolate. And I just started crying. And I tell you what, that is where the tears started that whole weekend, okay? When it came to Disneyland. However, I remember talking to my coaches and everything that I would say to them, I would say to them in a way where I wanted them to understand who I was. Because what I've done before, like you guys can see right here, I've wrote 3 books in the past. The first one right here, the red one, is called The Realization of Irrelevance, Finding Your You After the Military. That was my first book that I written right after I retired from the military. I did it on my own, self-published, the whole 9 yards. I never did anything like that before. Didn't even know what I was doing, but I know that I did it. And so what I did not realize, what I did not know at the time was that that book is the format, the platform, the format, the structure of the way that I live my life. It really is. And so I was able to take that and use it for foundation, use it as the framework for what I do now in terms of coaching. And so, but I started off as a veteran coach, right? Because I was working with veterans because I understood there was a lot of things in a veteran community that only I felt that only a veteran or someone who had served can understand some of the things that we were going through. And so I took it as my own personal mission to try to be a help in that area. However, that didn't last as long as I would like it to last because I realized that there was more politics involved than I thought. And then, but I still was in that field and I'm still in that area and I still give back to that community whenever I can because I am a soldier, I'm a veteran for life. So that was the first book. Okay. After that, there came a book called Sex After Divorce, which was an anthology of several of us that came together and just talked about things that happened during our relationships of marriage and then how our lives evolved sexually after the marriage. And then the third book is Voices Behind the Mental Health. And that was also a book that was geared around military and suicide thoughts and suicide ideations and things like that, right? So that was a lot of what I did in the very beginning when I retired from the military in 2016. And so after that, I started to kind of move away from that area more towards the 2020 time frame, 2020, 2021, when we started going to COVID. And so I started really leaning more into my master's degree, which is in marriage and family counseling. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and both degrees are structured in biblical foundation of the colleges that I went to. However, I also knew that when I was doing my thesis and things like that for my degrees, wasn't really a thesis, it was like final papers. It was one of those things where the projects that I did, it really caused me to just look at my life and the structure of my life. And so as that came along and I wrote the book, The Realization of Relevance, I just remember even in the field of coaching veterans and things like that, it was just, I still felt like there was a part of me that I was always leaving out. So if there's something that I'm doing or coaching in any kind of way in that field, it felt like I wasn't being my authentic self, right? It was feeling like I was still holding back that part of me that needed to say stuff, that needed to, you know, to say what I was feeling internally, to say what I felt like was being given to me, like the gifts, because I feel that for me to be the best coach I can be, there's nothing about me that I can leave behind, right? I have to bring everything to the table. And so when I was telling this to my coaches that I had just gotten in 2023, this time in 2023, we were at Disneyland. And I explained to them that this is me, this is who I am, and this is what I want to do. How do I bring all of me to the table and not leave any of me behind? And so he came up, he was, because I always talk about childhood, even through the conversations that I would have with the people that weekend in Disneyland, as well as the conversations that I would have with my coaches, even after that. And that's why I say I believe that this weekend or the weekend of August the 3rd or so was the reason weekend that I became impregnated with the idea with hood parenting, but it hadn't been birthed yet. And the reason why I say it had been, I had been impregnated with it because it was like we were starting from the beginning. Like there was something there that was forming, but we didn't know if it was a boy or a girl yet, right? We knew it was a baby, right? We knew it was a baby, but we didn't know the gender yet, okay? And so that's pretty much what it was. It was the beginning stages of it. And so they were able to really just take all of me and put it into who I am and who I don't forget. And that is just literally the fact that my upbringing, literally my upbringing and the things that I saw, witnessed to, encountered, whatever it may be, how it actually was part of, it's like the biggest part of me. But I also recognize that I'm able to take those things that I learned there and incorporate them in my life. And so hood parenting is that thing where you're able to take your survival mode to your legacy mode, right? So when you think about it, that is my hashtag. I mean, excuse me, not my hashtag, my one liner, right? Survival mode to legacy mindset. Survival mode to legacy mindset. That's what it is, right? Because when you think about hood parenting, it's the journey back to yourself. It is the journey back to yourself of everything, the foundational work of who I am, right? Because here's the thing, when you're raised in that environment, and the reason why people say, well, what is so authentic about that? Because you learn a certain set of survival skills when you are raised in that type of life that you wouldn't get anywhere else. I don't care what you say. I don't care who you are. I don't care. When you are raised in an environment where you have to use your survival skills, to use all your instincts, all your senses, right? You have to use everything. Like you just can't be visually, right? You also have to be able to hear things. You also have to be able to smell things because you might be walking by something and you smell something before you see it. Okay? Trust me, you smell stuff before you see it. Trust me, you smell stuff before you see it. I don't care what it is. It could be unalive bodies, it could be drugs. You smell them before you see them. So, in that environment, you have to have all senses working at all times, right? So, when you come into the world, right, I feel like that environment is what allowed me to be grounded and what allowed me to be connected to what I needed to do in order to continue to survive and to survive in this world. Because this world is not one of those things where you can be good at this one thing and that's it, or you can be good at something else over here and that's it. You have to just be knowledgeable of all things. That's how I see life. That's how I see hood parenting. You have to be knowledgeable of all things. There is no one thing that is more important than anything else. You have to know how to change a tire. You have to know how to bake a pie. You have to know how to sew a button on a shirt. You have to know how to fire a weapon. You have to know how to cook a meal. You got to know how to balance a checkbook. You have to know how to keep your house clean. You got to know how to keep your ass clean. You got to know how to keep yourself together physically, mentally, and emotionally. You know how to. I mean, there are so many things that you got to know how to do in this world. It's not just about being grown or being an adult. It's because it's adults out here that still cannot function and still cannot manage their own lives. So when you think about it from that perspective, hood parenting is everything. You don't leave anything behind. If somebody is teaching something, I don't care what it is, you learn it. And I say this because I remember specifically, and I know people do this, but I remember making it my mission. Whenever I would meet soldiers in the military that were from different parts of life that I had no knowledge of, I would make it my mission to find out whatever those soldiers were willing to share with me, because I wanted to have an understanding how people live in the world. I wanted to have an understanding, and I'm not gonna make no mistake about it. I still won't know, but I'm not. But to if I ever go to some of those countries, I would have a general idea of what to expect. Like I remember soldiers telling me how even when they were kids, they were like, I'm not talking kids like 13, 14, 15. No, I'm talking about kids 7, 8 years old where they had to go and work. They had to go and do their part in order to make sure that the family got fed. So I don't know what a 7 or 8 year old does, but they were doing something. And so when I think about the things that they do and how our kids are the ones that are Americanized, it's like, you know what? We're not doing enough when it comes to these kids. We don't have our foot on their throats and on their necks enough. That's just my opinion. Because if you telling me that this soldier at 7 or 8 years old, he was working for his family to help eat, to help feed his family, and he's okay with that and he understands that, then why am I having to argue with people about cleaning up after themselves? Why am I had to argue with people about why they don't deserve to get stuff that we give them, allowances and going out to eat and going to dinners? And it's somebody that don't even eat at 7. It's people that don't even eat at 7 unless they go fetch water or they go do their part. Let me drink some wine. So when I think about hood parenting, it's not just a brand, it is a movement, because it is literally the encompass of everything, right? You raised in survival mode, but now you get to take everything that you've been through and rewrite the script. Rewrite your family script. And I'm talking about the healing. I'm talking about the hustle. I'm talking about the things that y'all had to do or you had to do, the hard on or the hard earned wisdom, right? The hard earned wisdom that you got from being on the block, right? Those things, let me tell you something. I know for a fact that some of the best businessmen in the world are people who did pharmaceutical drugs or who dealt pharmaceutical drugs when they were younger. When it comes to businessmen, and I'm not talking about they're these big time businessmen because a lot of them don't want to be, although some of them are. But I'm talking about the ones who were your corner boys or your small boys. Those guys are doing really amazing in business. Trust me, I know. I have like if they're not soldiers that I know in my life, then I only have a couple of square friends. Like seriously, I only have a couple of square friends. All of my male friends, I only have literally maybe when I say one, two at the most, three of people that I know in my life or men that I know in my life that never did any of those things. But other than that, everybody that I know in my life were either soldiers and or dealers and and or and or or. Okay. That's it. And so I also know that those men, some of the best businessmen that I know, they have a business mindset in a lot of ways. Look at your rappers, okay? So what I'm saying is that when you take those things and you understand it and you use them to your advantage, listen, you're unstoppable. That's why it's important to learn all that you can, right? Or learn all. Don't cut yourself off. I hear people say, "Well, I don't really need to know that." Yes, you do. Like I've even heard my kids say certain things. I remember I have my one of my bonus daughters. She was talking to me one day, and I would always tell her about learning how to cook. And so she wasn't like, no, I'm not saying she wasn't young, because anybody that's young of not an adult, they're going to say silly stuff. They're going to say things that children say. So she probably was about maybe 15, 16 when she said this. And I explained to her that she needed to learn how to cook. She told me that she didn't need to learn how to cook because she was never getting married and she was never having any children. And I explained to her that you don't know what may happen. And not only that, but you have to eat. So her thing was she would pay for herself something to eat. Okay, well, that might be your life. And I'm not saying that it ain't gonna be your life, because I know people that still don't cook, and I know people that got kids and don't have kids and don't cook, and some people have kids and don't cook. And so I know all different dynamics, right? However, to not know at all is putting yourself in a box. So how about this? How about you learn how to cook, or learn how to clean, or learn how to sew, or learn how to do whatever these things that you need to learn how to do, right? That I'm supposed to also teach you to do, in addition to all the other things that I'm teaching you how to do, right? Because those were the only things. Why don't you learn these things? And if you don't need them, then you won't use them. However, if you ever need to pull them out of your kick bag or out of your toolkit, you have them, right? Well, that wasn't the case. She told me that she didn't need to learn how to cook. So sure enough, 2, 3 years later, she got a husband and was pregnant. So she had to know how to fry some chicken. She didn't call me. She didn't call me because she didn't want to hear, "I told you so." Because you ain't got to do it, but you need to learn how to do it. And that's the difference. That's the difference between people who understand that when it comes to life, you can't put everything into one basket. You got to be smart at all things. You got to be able to do a lot of things, not just one thing. I've heard people tell me, and I mean this, and I mean to each his own. And this is not me coming for people or anything like that, but I know what I know. I've heard people tell me, well, they've done things in life and they've done it without this. They've done it without being qualified to do it necessarily, whether they don't have the credentials, right? Or they don't have a high school diploma, or they don't have a degree, or they don't have whatever. And they say, well, you know what? I've been doing these things forever. But what I do know is that nothing lasts forever. That's what I know. I do know that nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever. And so what I'm saying is that you got to be able to put yourself in a position where nobody can take from you or question your authenticity, your credibility, your knowledge, your education, or anything, right? You can be, listen, when I tell you you cannot afford in this life, especially, I'm looking at the way the world is now. We go every day, this world gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. Let me tell you something. I know I'm going to get back to hood parenting, but I have to go through this because if you know anything about me, honey, I'm a storyteller. One thing I knew about this life is that I could not afford, even as a young girl, to be smart in one thing. I knew that I had to be pretty. I knew that I had to be strong. I knew that I had to be smart, right? Because why? All things come to an end, no matter what. No matter what. There was a time, and I think about men in my family. Like, for example, I had an uncle who's now transitioned. But I remember a time where years ago, you could have a high school diploma and you can get a job at the Ford credit, Ford, GM, Chrysler back in the day. Well, as time started to turn and as we went more into your millenniums, your later generations, your 90s and your 2000s, even those jobs required that you have a high school diploma and more, right? Because you didn't even have to have a high school diploma back then. You could get in forward with just a high school diploma or without a high school diploma. Same thing with the military. But then they changed it and said, no, at the minimum, you have to have at least a high school diploma. Well, then it became, well, okay, now that you have a high school diploma, that's fine. But if you want to continue to evolve, if you want to continue to grow and level up in this job, whether it's over here at this plant or over here in this military, you need some type of credential that says that I don't care if it's in basket weaving, okay? It could be in basket weaving, but you need a AA or a BA, something to be able to qualify for this position. Other than that, you can't legally get this position because see, there's people in this field who are actually educated and got the experience who can work here. And guess what? They're not as much as you. We know you got seniority. So what I'm saying is that it became a time where those older generation of people started to get bought out and pushed out to retirement, right? And a lot of them didn't have what they needed. The same thing with the military. I watched as soldiers started to get put out because they lacked promotion. And a lot of them lacked promotion because they did not have the education because you needed points for that. So what I'm saying to you is don't ever think that just because something works today and you know that you're an exception to the rules, don't keep on pressing your luck, is what I'm saying. Don't keep on pressing your luck. Do go out and get yourself what you need in order to make sure nobody can ever take it from you. That means that you have to be well at all things. You have to know a little bit at all things. And I cannot say it enough. When I tell you I can't say it enough, I think about even my baby brother tells me about the time where my mother had bought me a sewing machine when I was a kid because I wanted to learn how to sew. I had took sewing classes in school, and so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start sewing with patterns. And in school we just learn how to make bears and stuff, stuffed animals and everything. I was like, I'm gonna make me some clothes. So my mother bought me a sewing machine. Well, here's the thing. My brother ended up needing to sew something one day. I didn't do it, and my mother didn't do it. So he ended up doing it. He had to go in there and figure out how to use my sewing machine and did it himself. Well, to this day, my brother tells me that his kids, all his kids, and he has kids that span from the age of my oldest niece is 33, all the way to the age of 10 or 11, he has kids. And he tells me that every one of his kids come in there and tell him, hey, Dad, can you sew this for me? Why? Because he made himself learn how to use my sewing machine when he was a kid. And he's been married 3 times, and he said none of his wives had any idea how to sew or even how to sew a button back onto something or how to fix a zipper. So that was something that he was able to learn. And so he didn't know that he was going to need that skill one day. A guy don't think about stuff like that, at least typically anyway, right? So when you think about things like that, it's like, okay, learn everything you can learn. And this is what hood parenting is. Hood parenting is us allowing us to heal some of those things, allowing us to take everything that we've learned, that we've been through, that we've experienced, right? And turn it into our legacy. Doing things differently than the way we would have done things. So when I think about hood parenting, it's not just about the kids or whatever. That's why when I speak and I talk to the parents and I talk to the kids because we're still trying to figure some things out, right? Even when I think about relationships with my elders in my family, right? I'm in that generation where there's a lot of kids up under me, and then there's a lot of people, that's older than me, that generation ahead of me. However, as they move on, I'm moving up into that next generation. Like we're literally the next generation. My grandparents are no longer here. And then my mother and her family, right? It was 12 of them. We're down to 8, I believe it is. 7. 7. On my dad's side, it was 6 of them. We're down to 1 on his side. So then after that, it goes next to my generation. So there's that resistance from them. And then there's that us trying to hold them and then trying to pull our children with us. And so as we're trying to pull our children with us, there's a lot of things that we recognize that I don't know if we forgot about or what, but I recognize that there are so many things with our young adults. I don't understand if we didn't tell it to them or we forgot to tell it to them or we were so in a rush to fix everything when something went differently. Was it that we were so in a rush to fix everything? Did we want them to not suffer and struggle, that when it came time for them to come up to some age, a lot of times they didn't know just how to do it because we didn't allow them to brainstorm. We didn't allow them to troubleshoot. We didn't allow them to problem solve. We didn't allow them to do any of those things. So I think about that, right? I think about that from that generation because I see a lot of the kids in this generation, the 30-year-olds or the barely 40s and things, right? But then I think about, listen, those are our kids. So where did we fail at? How do we hold ourselves accountable? How do we get them and say, listen, we're responsible for this. We have to do something different for us, for our generation, for our next generation, for the people that follow us as ancestors. Because listen, one day, 30 something years from now, I will be an ancestor. And so for that, it's like, what will I have left the ones that come up after me? What will I have left them to carry on with? What do I want them to know that's most important? So when I think about hood parenting, I think about all those things that we ran from at my generation or even my mother's generation or my parents' generation, where they didn't know how to cross over, and then we didn't know how to bring these things with us a lot of times, but yet keep our kids from the things that we experience. Because there is a very, very fine line. Like, how do I teach my kids that that this life is not earned? I mean, given, it's earned. Like, you have to go through some things to be able to sit here in this life and experience the things that I experienced from the level in which I experienced them at, right? I tell that to my kids all the time. This is earned, not given. So when I tell them that this is earned, not given, how do I get them to see this without terrorizing them? Because once they see a little bit of stress, they revert back. And I noticed that, right? And it's like, okay, after about 2 times, then I'm to fix it, right? And so I noticed that with my 30-year-old. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, when it comes to our parents, because my mother had me at 16. So a lot of what I know, she have no idea about at all, right? I remember my mother graduating high school, which means that she was already a mother by the time she graduated high school. I was already of age to remember her graduating from high school. Think about that. And she had me at 16, but I wasn't 2 when she graduated high school. No, I was much older because it took her several years to go back and finish. And she eventually finished in night school. I don't even know if they have night school anymore, but she finished in night school because she should have. And I'm glad she did. I'm proud that she was able to overcome that and go back with my brother and I, because she was still a single parent. She was still, raising the both of us. And so she still had to do it. And so for her, I'm very proud that she was able to go back. But when it comes to us or our understanding, that's as far as she could take me in terms of the things that I needed to know. And so a lot of it, I had to go out here and figure it out on my own the hard way. And I'm sure that's how most people is. But then there's a time in our lives where we learn so much that we're able to, like, I used to tell my kids, listen, because I know some of them would say, one of my bonus kids would say, I want to learn some things on my own. I want to learn things on my own. I want to know what it's like. And my thing with these, but pick and choose, because see, what I do know is that I can sit here and tell you everything there is about life. I can sit here and give you a play-by-play of what is to happen in life. If you do these things can happen. Every scenario you come up with in life, I can give you at least 3 different outcomes. Okay? Because I've seen a lot of different scenarios play out in people's lives. And I remember all the stories. And that's why I am a storyteller. Okay? So I'm telling her, listen, so in other words, if I'm telling you that these are 3 ways that these things might turn out, here's what I'm not going to tell you is the things that I don't know. So now that I've showed you how to get to, if there's 10, let's say there's 10 levels in life. If I've showed you how to get to level 6, okay, and that's as far as I went to level 6 or 7, hey, I'm going to need you to get a little bit further, get to 7 or 8, which means that I've taught you all that you can learn from me in terms of how to get to this level. Because see, now I'm slowing down. I'm slowing down. I'm old. I'm slowing down. You got to keep pushing. So what I'm trying to tell my kids is that it's going to be things that you're going to experience that I'm not going to experience. So rather than you going through the things that I've already been through, save yourself. Save your sorrows for something else, because trust me, life is going to give you your own set of problems that you don't need to be repeating problems already. So don't go out here and do the things that we've done, that we as parents and told y'all not to do, because why? We've already done them. So you're going to have your own set of problems. Social media, we didn't have to deal with social media. Social media brings on envy, brings on jealousy, brings on all sorts of things. Those are things that we didn't have to worry about. If you didn't go to our school or lived on our block and in our neighborhood, we didn't give a shit what you had because we didn't see it. Okay? If you lived 2 miles that way, we didn't even know you. We didn't know you. So we didn't care what y'all had. But social media puts everything in people's faces. So you see where I'm going with this? The generations are dealing with things that we didn't have to. So this is what we try to tell our kids. You're going to deal with your own set of problems. You don't need to be trying to do things that I've done or making life harder for yourself in paths that I've already cleared for you. I've already cleared these paths for you. Trust me, honey, I got the t-shirt and everything. I've cleared the path for you. So why are you going to go and do this stupid thing again that I've already done 5 times? Okay? But one thing about hood parenting that I will say is that no matter what, it is rooted in love. It's rooted in love, it's rooted in legacy, it's rooted in realness, right? For what I want, for the things that I may not remember to tell my children, for the things that my children may forget to tell my grandchildren. And so with this brand of hood parenting, I know that, listen, it ain't no one way to do things. My book, The Realization of Relevance, I talk about 3 different people in this lifetime. You're 3 different people in this lifetime. For me, I am the person I was before I served. I am the person that I was while I was serving. And I am the person I am now post serving. 3 different people. And in this life, you have 3 different opportunities or ways in which you can do something, or routes in which you can go down a road. Now, here's the thing. Can we move different ways? That one piece this way, and if this is we can hypothetic this thing all doggone day long. But who got time for that? Who got time for that? That's just like a chessboard, right? You got what? 32 pieces? 32 chess pieces? 16 apiece? 64 squares, I think it is. If I remember correctly, I could be off by the numbers. I could be doubling it. We can sit here all day long, and if we move this piece over here, this is a different board. If you move that king over here, that's a different board. If you move that queen over there, that's a different board. That rook over there, that's a different board. Listen,